Hello, everyone, and welcome to Camera Culture, a series from Whale FM putting diverse creators of the NFT photography movement in focus. My guest today is multidisciplinary artist e0in, who has taken inspiration from retro tech gaming to truly harness the power of the blockchain and leave a lasting mark on the world with on-chain photography. e0in, thank you so much for coming on and speaking with the Whale community today about your new project.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, really hyped to catch up again. For anyone that hasn't heard of you before, had the opportunity to check some of our prior interviews, could you give us a brief background on yourself and your multidisciplinary practice?
Yes, so I suppose going back as far as college, I did fine arts sculpture in university, kind of based mostly on stone and bronze. Then once I graduated, I learned that the process wasn't actually very hands-on. You kind of give your work to a foundry and you get the finished thing back. So I started painting. Then those canvases started getting bigger and bigger until it kind of became unavoidable that I had to go larger onto wall size, murals. So then did my first wall. Well, I messed around with graffiti when I was a kid. First wall since my teens, and instantly that became like this mission to paint bigger and more obscure areas and that kind of thing. So that led on to sort of maybe 10 years of traveling around the world and just painting as much as I humanly could. As the conversation would go, is leaving your mark out in the world. And I guess when COVID hit, travel wasn't really possible anymore. And a friend of mine gave me a go of a VR headset. And the things that I've been painting for those 10 years, I'd always imagined them as a 3D object, I guess, from the sculptural background. So I'd always wondered sort of what the backside of the object that I was painting would look like. So when I had this VR headset, I went into Gravity Sketch, and within like 2 minutes, I had made this sculptural thing that I had, visualized in my mind for 10 years. And it was just this crazy kind of moment where I was walking around this thing and my brain was telling me it was really there. But of course it was digital, so that I found that really interesting because this kind of crossover between digital and physical at the moment, there's a separation because you need a device for augmented reality to work. But down the line, we'll be wearing glasses and we'll be able to see things that aren't physically there. But it just kind of, to me, it's interesting that these things can exist in one realm, but are only accessible through a digital kind of, filter or gateway to seeing them. So yeah, that then led, once I had these digital models, I started implanting them into the photography that I used to take. When I was on these trips, I'd be photographing the areas that I'd be painting in, and started dropping the models into the scenes as if they were left behind in the same way as the paintings. And just, it was just a really natural kind of progression in the work. And then another friend of mine had gotten involved in NFTs sort of maybe mid to late 2020. So it was around the end of the year 2020, I tried to start getting onto the platforms. And I think it was around March 21 that I got onto Maker's Place through him and started minting work. And then just that, I suppose the ephemeral nature of graffiti, that it'll only exist for as long as it's there, and then once it's painted over or buffed out or erodes away, it's gone. This kind of permanence of blockchain or minting your work onto the blockchain really interested me. And then I suppose through trying to really understand what was going on with deploying your work onto the blockchain, I suppose I started really getting interested in tokens that were fully on-chain, rather than IPFS or Airweave or other servers. And that kind of led to this mission to try and get the photography fully on-chain. That kind of started in summer 2021, I think it was, trying to get a contract written that would allow that to happen. Now, in the beginning, I had hoped to put a full resolution image on chain. And then I learned, I knew that it would be expensive, but I thought, theoretically it's possible. But then I learned about the limitations of how much information can actually go into a block.
I had seen some of your posts on that, and
yeah.
I want to dive into that a little bit. But before we go forward, because I think you kind of not glaze, but I mean, I asked you for a synopsis, but I just find I just find your background so incredible. Like, a lot of people have studied different disciplines and then try to apply in practice. Like, you went to trad art school and then found yourself throwing up burners, right? Like huge scale street art, because and then in doing so, you appreciated the possibilities of it being like 3D in nature, and that led to you exploring VR and AR at the same time you're doing photography of like abandoned locations that look like post-apocalyptic or something, right? Like, you could tell me some of those shots you have are out of Chernobyl or something, I'd believe you. At the same time, you're sculpting, you're painting, you're doing photography, you get into blockchain, you're trying VR, AR, now you're looking to put things on chain. Like, to me, that's really impressive. It's a unique skill set, and I love the ability to flow like between what some people would say street art, trad art. It doesn't matter if it's more tech inclined, all of it's kind of synergistic to you, and led you to this point, which I think is super, super dope. So I just needed to take a pause and just recognize that, like, that's not typical. So props to you, definitely,
I appreciate
for that.
Now, I mean, it's probably, at times it's probably been to my detriment that I've always been very experimental, or, trying to push forward with what I'm doing. Like, when I was painting the faces and the eyes and stuff that you're showing there was a lot of recognition for that at the time, but that work to me kind of had its time. I do really love looking back on it, and if the opportunity ever comes that there was a piece that suited that, I would paint it again. But it had its time, and you progress on to the next thing, and then that might lead on to something else. And to the detriment to gallery, from a gallery point of view, they want to see you know, maybe a tried and tested style that they know is going to sell. And it makes sense. It's business,
Yeah.
From an artist point of view, I think you have to always be experimenting and pushing forward. You can't really find
Yeah.
your thing and then just stick there.
Even these,
Yeah.
which are like essentially you kind of merge then you like your graffiti and the sculpting and it all came together. I saw another post, I'll see if I can come across it, where you said, "Hey, well, let me take this and do it with light painting."
Yeah.
And like, and literally recreated it in light paint with light painting with
Yeah. So,
slow with slow, I don't know what you call it, slow frame photography or whatever, where
yeah,
the camera's taking.
long, shutter speed. Yeah. So that was basically the first sort of iteration where I was trying to take the objects that I was painting and putting them out away from the wall, so out in nature and forests and that kind of thing. And again, it got quite a bit of recognition, but there's some of them there. But the bigger sort of outlets didn't want to push it out because at the time it was seen it wasn't real. They were saying, "Oh, it's just photoshopped," but it wasn't. It was all done in camera. But in today's terms, now we're getting closer to when these digital assets can exist in the world around us. I think in time it'll be recognized as, there is no real or physical anymore. It's just how you access the things that are there.
Right. A lot of support for that notion on our Discord. People mentioning it's all about experimenting, and they appreciate that. So we talked before. You weren't getting, I guess, progress. I guess it was getting better, like support locally for the things that you were doing. Being that what does the term "real" mean anyway nowadays, right? There's been a lot of progression, and I guess understanding that. You've done some experimentation. I definitely saw like the collaboration that you've done over the past year that was super dope, right?
Yeah.
You hopped out onto Tezos and we're experimenting too, not only creating these things but also creating environments for people to go into. I think in Monaverse or Mochaverse, one of the two.
In Mona, yeah.
And Mona, so you've done a lot of experimentation, and one of the things that it led you to was the progression to the project that we're talking about here today with Forget Me Nots.
Yeah.
So you were interested in the permanence that was possible from the blockchain, and it's really interesting to me that like from putting up these amazing, incredible pieces that would decay over time, that blockchain interests you because of some of the technical capabilities of it. Tell me about Forget Me Nots and how that really came about.
Yeah. So, I mean, from the graffiti side of things, it was always part of the beauty to me that I could spend. Now I paint very fast, so it's all relative, but I could spend a couple of hours painting something, or let's take another artist, for example. Someone might spend a couple of days painting something, and then they take their photograph, and then an hour later, someone could walk up to that wall and buff it out and paint the next thing. So it's gone forever. So I think from that background, there was always a beauty that things are only there for a very short time, and in lifetime sense. A lot of the paintings that I've done over the years have decayed, and the paint is faded, and the canvas is torn, and they break down over time. And even the digital photos that you take, they're on hard drives, and the hard drives fail and get corrupted and all the rest. So it was the permanence of this stuff interested me because from a legacy point of view and a generational thing, as an artist, is like what mark are you leaving for people to see? And I suppose at the time that I was kind of considering this, my mother has been doing the ancestry, searching back through your ancestry, and when you look back, generally you can find the name and the occupation, and that's about as much information as you can get, and some photographs maybe. And I was wondering, when people look back in 100 years from now, what will they see about us? And if all my hard drives fail and the servers go down and all the rest, what we'll be seeing. And at least with this work being fully on chain, granted, blockchain might not exist in 100 years, but if it is, the best chance of something existing will be fully on chain, because it's there, it can't be corrupted. As long as Ethereum exists, it's going to be there. So there'll be an image and there'll be a little bit of text, and it's just kind of a little window into the work that, the work that's led me to doing that. And I suppose the overruling message is just I suppose as an artist, you just want to leave a mark in the world, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of reasons that people come to the NFT space, whether it's financialization, or they see more opportunities to connect in communities, or collectors or artists that they want to connect with. For me, it was funny. I was in a group and people were talking about gaming. They were like, this is so cool. You accomplish X, Y, and Z, and you keep the thing. And you can put that into another game, and if you want to, you can sell. But the point is, it's yours, right? There's some kind of permanence to it. And I was like, that's kind of cool, and I'm a musician, so I'm like, that's kind of cool. And then when I started looking at it, and I was like, whoa, I could take this. Like, for me, creating is like it's like encapsulating something, a thought, an emotion, and really putting it into this concentric pinpoint. And then the idea that you could put that on chain and possibly, definitely live on beyond, longer than me. Perhaps in perpetuity, as long as the electric grid is going, right? Now that was like wild to me. I'm like, what, that in itself is almost like an artistic statement. So I can definitely relate to that. But what I find really intriguing about it, so you thought like, hey, the blockchain can do this stuff. Let's explore what it can do relative to permanence. And photography is definitely something that's interesting to me, because I get stressed out, dude. I got to be honest with you. I have like folders that say sort later of thousands of pictures, right? I think it was Punk6529 put a thread up not long ago. It was like, we all have these giant folders and we never get around to sorting them. I have some from 20 years ago that were done with, I guess, lower quality digital cameras, but at the time, it was cool. And like now it says like file corrupted. I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
It's gone. And like, I'm sure there's stuff I'm going to lose because it's just out of sight, out of mind. I'm hoping the cloud can carry me, but even that could have an issue, right? One day there's a failure or whatever. So the idea of putting it on chain is definitely brilliant. But what I think is really cool is you found beauty in the decay of the physical. And it's almost like the inverse now, because when I looked at some of the things you were talking about on your socials about why this project was meaningful to you, it wasn't just like, hey, we can save photography. It was the nuance of the code, what it means that it would have permanence, the beauty in the technical translation of it, even in just the binary translation. Like, it's the inverse almost of what you talk about with the graffiti. So it's like full circle.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that Dylan or Dill.eth would be able to hop onto this call, but I think he's away. So he would probably have the more technical knowledge to be able to speak exactly what's going on in the contract. But to me, it's just I suppose all fully on-chain tokens, but the way that these appear in Etherscan, to me, it's a very pure token. It's when you go into the actual transaction, it's like title of the piece, the description, which is just a little bit of text, and then the image code. That's it. There's nothing else. And it just seemed like a very, very pure. There's no messing around with it. It's a photograph. I don't know of. I actually don't know of any other photography that's been put fully on chain. probably because of the reason of the cost and the data limitations. But it's, I don't know, you know, there's a lot of on-chain stuff, but it's always generated. So this is a real world image that's being left for eternity.
Right. So let me rewind a little bit, right? So you had this idea that you wanted to put photography on chain. When did it come to you on how you were going to do that, like the device and how to make it? Because I think you alluded to it earlier. You had the idea, but the compression of what how lossy the quality would be of photography to actually put it on chain, it would be like, I don't know, something from decades ago, right? It would be very, very poor quality. So either have that compromise or do something different. And you ended up looking and ended up on a different device. Tell me how you got there.
Yeah, so the original idea was to put like a full high resolution modern image on, and then learned about the limitations of the block size and that. And I found out how much information we'd be able to put on. So I started working backwards with the high resolution image and basically just resizing it. It ended up being very pixelated and all the rest, but the reason why I didn't like that was because that, to my mind, that wasn't a photograph. It was a regenerated secondary image. It was resized. It wasn't a pure photograph, if that makes sense. And
Right.
so I started looking back through. So I moved house last year as well, and I was going back through my hoard of my lifetime of belongings at my family house, and found a couple of old cameras that I was wondering, would they work? Would they be small enough? And then found my Game Boy, and I was like, yes, the camera that was on that has to be a tiny file, for it to actually work on the Game Boy back then. So I took a few test photos, and they came out, I think they're around 4 kilobytes per photo. And that was definitely achievable to put fully on chain. And so then I started speaking to the first developer. So I went through 3 developers to actually get it done, but the first one, I gave him the image, and we did get one on testnet, and that was like March last year, or February, March last year. But I think there was issues with it not displaying on, I think maybe it displayed on Rarible, but not OpenSea or something. There was some sort of issue with it.
Yeah, I think I read that your contract failed, right? Like,
yeah, I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but he couldn't figure out where the issue was. And I spoke to the next group of developers. They said that the contract looked sound. They couldn't understand why it wasn't working. And I guess from a developer's point of view, there's a certain amount of work that has to go into writing this stuff. So the developer basically is doing the work for free or pro bono or whatever, until it sells. So the developer gets 20% of the sale, was the agreement that we came to. But I can't do coding, so that's where they came in. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there.
no, that's fine. You worked with a developer. The contract initially failed. You eventually found your way to where it works.
So I found Game Boy camera, started shooting with that. At first, I wasn't a huge fan of how the photos looked, but that's just because, our eyes now are so used to seeing high resolution, really vibrant, sharp images. But I do find a real beauty in these images. Like they're almost like an abstract digital artwork to me. because they're so pixelated. But then when you do view them smaller, it's kind of like it's funny because I've painted a few of them on larger canvases, and they kind of seem to me like a modern version of an expressionist painting or something. Like you can't see what it is up close, but when you step back, the image becomes clearer.
Right. I mean, this is just me personally, and I may not be the best gauge. I think because everybody knows I'm a sucker for retro tech and gaming and pixel art. So I don't know. This was cater made the type of thing that I would enjoy. But I think holistically it makes sense, right? You're taking something that's organic, putting it through the lens, trying to put it into a language with technology that can be there with some permanence years down the line.
Yeah.
And you're taking it and putting everything in this very aggregate technological way, and the image even gets translated that way. I think there's a beauty in it, and the simplicity of it, and that so much of it is code and mechanical, but it comes from this genuine emotive memory or feeling, or there's things within the description of what they represent. So it's this confluence of the capabilities of the tech, and then what it means to the future, and that it's actually encapsulating something organic. It almost reminds me in an abstract way of, are you familiar with Sasha Stiles? She's
No.
a poet, a brilliant poet. She's an AI researcher, and she works with her AI. She's trained to collaborate on poetry, but she did one specific thing that just, like, me thinking about it, kind of blew my mind. She said, I collaborated with the AI to create a poem that I then manually wrote out in binary by hand, so that in the future the machines could read it and understand. And I'm like, whoa, like that's so, that's like so like next level on a loop. And in some ways this reminds me of that, right? Like this is something that would be translatable in the future.
Yeah. So that's funny. Actually, I didn't realize somebody had done that. So as part of, if this series becomes successful, I do want to offer, different extras. And one of them was to have, a signed print of the code of each image, on a small print. So it'll look like a gray square, but the image is in there. I find that the code to me is really interesting, because is the code the artwork, or is the image the artwork?
Right.
In blockchain terms, it's the code.
And whereas gen art, that certainly has its lane and what it's doing. This is taking actual photography. So it's your vision through the lens, and then translating it through what the machines and the computer, and then ultimately the blockchain will be able to hold and relay. So like there's so many nuanced layers to it. I love these things that push and get me to think about the capabilities of this tech beyond, like, let's just ride our pre-existing understanding of art and putting it on. So I think it's really, really cool. I pulled up this post here where you were actually looking at some prints of the base code of the image, right? The data as well. So that was really cool. But I digress. You said your own contract. Was having your own contract important to you beyond just the capabilities? Like, I know a lot of people, for them, the contract is an expression in itself.
Yeah, I mean, if you go into the contract, you can see the transactions. It was deployed, and then it was I can't remember if it was sent, or the wallet that I've used to mint every single NFT was the first transaction, I think. So I think the ownership was sent to that wallet, and then it was sent to the Forget-Me-Nots wallet. But I wanted the hot wallet that I've minted everything from to be in that lineage, because that's one of the beautiful things in blockchain, is you have this this provenance of what's actually happened in the history of it. And for me, I've always been interested in having my own contract. Like I was really interested when Manifold originally deployed their thing. I think that was great for artists. And I don't know if anyone's developed it yet. I think Manifold does have sort of parameters that you can change and really customize things now. But I think when you start looking at way more experimental stuff, you really have to either be a developer or know someone that has an understanding of it, which for me is unfortunate because I really love kind of testing things and experimenting with things. In this sense, I kind of have to, it is a collaboration between me and Dylan that wrote this one. Like, he's also, we've been speaking about deploying an 1155 contract so that to do additions. It'd just make the price more achievable for people to get into the work, because I think that's one of the obstacles at the moment with, well, it's only going to get worse with gas, but like these were quite expensive to mint. So I think when the market cycles, I don't even know if it'll be possible for me to mint any more work. So the series might end up being quite small,
Yeah, but I mean, I would, I would venture to guess that your vision for this is beyond, trying to just see what happens now, right? You're looking towards the future and definitely what this could mean from a legacy perspective,
Yeah,
as well
100%.
as, I mean, let's be honest, like there's a lot of people very interested in on-chain works. There's not a lot of projects that are able to do it and do it meaningfully. And the fact that we're having a camera culture segment talking about photography, and this is what we're looking at the beauty of the code, and like this is not typical. So I love that you went down this path, and with your history of experimentation, I'm sure there'll be more to come. I would love if you could to just highlight a couple of these pieces and just talk about what they were from a photography perspective, and what they meant to you, just to connect the humanity to it, right? Because there's a lot of code and a lot of what this will represent from a technology perspective down the line, but really this came from a place in your heart.
Yeah, 100%. And like this project is fully as a legacy thing. Like at the moment it's broken even, so it's not for financial gain or anything like that. It's just the money that comes in will allow more pieces to be minted and become part of this this legacy work. But yeah, I suppose the first piece, Forget Me Not, the reason for the title for the whole series was basically at my family house. My mother always had these flowers in the garden, and it was around the time that the first contract had been successful, and I was trying to figure out, like the developer was asking me what do I want to call it, what do I want to call the series, and I was like, throwing names around in my head, and nothing was really sticking, or didn't really get the point across. And as I was leaving the house one day, I saw the flowers and I was like, it's just perfect, so it's a very simple image, a couple of flowers from the garden, and I think it just encapsulates I grew up in this house, played with the Game Boy 25 years ago, probably around that garden, and 25 years later I pick a handful of them and take a photo on that Game Boy, deploy it onto this new futuristic technology, and it'll probably be being the first piece, it'll probably be the longest lasting piece of artwork that will be left from me, generationally.
Well, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. Any other one that you'd like to highlight?
Wild and Free is quite good. That was the first one that minted after the original one, and it was picked up. But Yeah, so for the last sort of 15 years, on and off traveling, I lived over on the west coast of Ireland, so surfing in the ocean was a very strong part of my life. And I'd love to know how much, there's all these stories now online of how much time you spend looking at your phone. And I'd love to have a similar figure of how long, I spent looking at the ocean. But that's sort of the sentiment behind this is a very simple image of waves on the water, and I suppose a moment to gather thoughts is what the message is saying in the description.
And that's really cool, that effect, like you said, like when it's blown up versus when it's, smaller, and how, it can change your perception of it. To me, it's like, it's so fire that you take such an organic thing that was done in such a traditional process, and and then translate it into something more aligned to what the blockchain will be able to read and convey down the line. There's just like a real beauty in that to me, and I'm sure some other people it resonates the same way. But I did check this post where you were throwing them up with some physical experimentation and what they would look like. These are super dope too.
Yeah, I love the paintings. The technique that I would have used for painting canvases before would have been completely different to this. Like, I would have gone into a canvas with no sketch, no preconceived idea of what it was going to be, and it'd be a lot freer. Whereas this, you grid out 12,000 squares, and then you number your 12,000 squares in sequence, and then you paint it. And it is quite, like, I suppose, therapeutic. You just get into it and you knock out your little squares, and like I was saying, it's kind of like a modern version of an expressionist painting. Up close, it is very difficult to see what the painting is, but if you stand back maybe 10 feet, it's very clear what it is. And that was quite interesting from a physical painting point of view. So that's sort of one of the things I would like to do, is to get that into a physical gallery at some stage. And I've been speaking to a couple, but generally I've found that the galleries I know of anyway don't really have an open mind towards this blockchain stuff.
Right.
Yes.
We had talked about that before.
Yeah.
And it sounds like they've, barely taken a toe forward. I don't even want to say a step, it sounds like. But I will say at first I was like, these would look so fire on a mural on like my wall. But
Yeah.
seeing these physicals are like really getting me
But
excited as well.
The wall is something that I really do want to do. And again, I've spoken to a couple of people about trying to get that to happen. It's going to have to be a big wall, really, and it's going to have to probably be viewable from a very far distance. And generally, those walls are very prominent, and either communities wouldn't want them to be painted, or they're going to be used for advertising. Like, generally is what I've found for over the years. But
it might be time to throw on the bandana and go back a little bit in time.
Maybe. But yeah, I just think it would be so cool to have one of these painted huge. If you had a wall that was, if it was possible to get one that was 10 meters tall by 12 meters wide, or even 5 meters tall by 7 meters wide, and you painted it out with this grid, I think it'd be such a cool image.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Man, this is just kind of taking me aback. It's kind of awe-inspiring seeing it all come together. We talked about the translation of the other artists and how you're doing it, and this is almost taking it to another level, right? You took a physical, you translated it into what the photography lens would show, you put that through the lens of a device to put in a more technical perspective. Then you take their output and translate it back into the physical. I mean, this thing is processed in so many different ways, and it gets character from each process it runs through. So very, very cool stuff. I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention, like, you went forward and actually built out a game for this
Yeah,
project.
yeah. So that was something I was dying to get that out. When the contract failed in March last year, the game was finished. It was good to go, and then the contract failed, and I basically had to shelf this thing that I was like, oh, people would love this, you know, being able to walk around this town, go into an art gallery, and view the photographs. Like, it kind of, again, it's like a full circle thing. Like the images are shot in the Game Boy camera, brought into the real world, dropped onto the blockchain, and then put back into the game. And yeah, it's a bit of fun. It was never going to be like a mind-blowing game. There is a couple of little tasks you can go through in the game and meet the collector at the end. But it's mainly to display the artwork, really.
Yeah, so I'll tell everybody I actually checked out this game and played it. It got a little bit addictive. If you're familiar with any games, it reminds me of Earthbound. It has really cool music too, but I have it muted just right now so people can hear us. Doesn't look like I hold enough PFPs yet to get into the store, guys.
Yeah.
So I gotta say, so like the game's super cool because the commentary in there, it's great dialogue, but it's fun tongue-in-cheek commentary on the NFT space, and not just being, you know, tribal and discrediting, you know, one sector or the other. It's really pretty evenly keeled, but it's very interesting to hear, I guess, some of your thoughts as a creative relative to the space. And it gives us more insight into you and your thought process and approach. And also this is a direct integration into the artwork. So I found that really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the bit of fun side of it, you know, was just looking at what was generally the stuff that's in the game. The dialogue was kind of stuff that was more prominent back sort of the start of last year. A few things have changed, but it was just sort of seeing what was being spoken about on Twitter constantly, and people were fighting over things, and you know, some of the things that were being said. I just thought it was quite funny to throw it in a game, and you know, it's basically like I'm the person running around the game, or the person playing it is navigating through this little world, and the little world is the crypto Twitter world. So I would like to develop the game more. It's something I'll probably add to over time, and when the edition contract is ready, I'll probably open another one of the buildings. I'll probably open up as a little edition room, and then possibly add, you know, more characters and dialogue and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so I spent like a good 45 minutes trying to progress this the other day. Almost got up to the amulet. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I'll drop the link in the Discord if you're cool with that so that people can check it out themselves. In addition to that, so you go into this room, right? It says it's a gallery, and there's a reason that this exists in the game. But this is what I thought was cool. All of these pieces, all of these things on here, and there's, I don't know how many are in here, a couple dozen. There's like 20 or so different.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. There's 100 different screens altogether. So that includes like I think there's 5 outdoor spaces, and then I guess there's probably, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 pieces. I'm not sure.
Right. So like there's like 50 pieces in here, some of which we've already seen, right? But many of these are not minted yet. And so as people play this, they can come across artwork that they really like. And if they wanted to, you know, they can reach out to you via this QR code and get things minted on the fly that really resonates with them, right? And so I don't, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a lot of opportunity for other integrations here to happen down the line. So I love that this has legs and life beyond just the artwork, beyond just what it represents. And now there's gamification as well, right? So like there's a lot of cool stuff. I even saw what looked like your sculptures in one of the rooms, if I'm not mistaken. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot.
I think it's the next room up if you
It
go upstairs.
right
Yeah.
up here in the middle. So like there's a lot going on here. And like I said, it's game. I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but there's a lot of cool stuff that could happen.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there's tons of pieces here that translate into how they would look on chain that if people wanted to kind of mint on demand, which is pretty interesting. I don't see that often.
Yeah. Originally, the idea was to have basically to have the gallery as a marketplace that you could go up to the piece on the wall and go directly to a mint link. But apparently there was issues with the contract, that the contract would have technically been open to anybody minting their own images. So that's why it kind of had to be minted directly from my wallet, from my collection.
These guys are on the Discord saying I'm holding out on the game. Yeah, I am for about 10 minutes. So you guys keep watching, right? Because I know everyone will go right to the game if I do it right now. Hey, I'm playing the game. Relax, guys.
I do need to figure out how to, if I have to find out if I can add a save game feature, because I remember you were saying that you had gone for dinner or something and come back and you'd lost your coins.
I did. I was about to get the amulet. Well, I was about to meet the collector, the big boss, but we'll say, I don't want to give away too much, but there's a lot to the little adventure here. I was impressed. Reminds me of Earthbound. Earthbound is a cult classic, so I'm sure some people are excited by that. I've been trying to get through this gate, and I've been trying to get down this this hole. I don't know exactly how to do it yet, but I'm working on it. Don't tell me anything, Owen. I'm working. I'm working. But super, super cool stuff. A question for you. I know you had been looking into this. Any plans for physicals for the game?
Yeah, so I do have 2 cartridges that I can like, they work on the Game Boy. And that was the original idea, was to have this physical thing that you could send out to people. And if it comes to the point where that is something that people would be interested in, then yeah, I could definitely do it. At the moment, I found that there seemed to be a bit of a shortage of the cartridges. So that'd be something I'd have to kind of look more into. But it's definitely, I'd love to be able to send physical versions of this game. I think it's so cool. Like,
Yeah, it's super dope. So like you get the physical tie-in to what the artwork means in the future, to what it means emotionally and how it resonated to you previously, and then you have the game. Like this lives in so many realms. That's why I love it. It's like multi-dimensional art, the way it's being expressed. So I'm geeking hard, man. But you hit all my you hit a lot of my touch points here. We got retro tech, we have gaming, we have photography. Super super dope project. And I can understand though, on the surface level, like say a gallery, how do you explain this quickly, right, to someone, right? Like how do they kind of wrap their head around it unless they're in this space and kind of experiencing these types of things? So
yeah, I mean, my brain probably works a bit, doesn't work very linearly. It kind of runs around the place, and I'll develop a few things alongside each other, and then whichever one is kind of strongest, I'll focus on that. So the game was a really fun part of it that I really enjoyed building, and I'm definitely looking forward to developing that more.
I know from some of our conversation, Ray, I was going to say that you plan to continue to develop it, and I have some I have some ideas of where you might go with cool integration. So I'm excited to see it. I did want to mention to everyone we do have a super dope POAP. So Owen, thank you so much for creating a very cool POAP for everybody. We like to give a cool commemorative collectible for people that tune into our spaces and our events. And this one is extra dope. So if you have the POAP app, that's the way to collect it. If you don't have the POAP app, I'll give you a minute or two to go ahead and download it from the App Store onto your phone. Real simple to do. And what you're going to do is you're going to put in a secret phrase, and it'll download the POAP into your collection. So go ahead and get your POAP app ready for the POAP. while we've been talking, I wanted to make sure to highlight how you'd like people to continue to connect people where they connect with this, or they're curious or enthusiastic. How would you say they should best participate with you? Obviously, on your socials, so on your Twitter, which is linked in the Twitter announcement. We'll put it into our Discord and our socials as well. They can follow you. They can see different drops that happen relative to it. The collection is on OpenSea. And I'm not sure if you made a formal announcement of the game being released, but we'll give it in our Discord as well. Any other ways people should stay connected?
No, I guess Twitter is probably Twitter and Instagram. Like I haven't really used Instagram much since really starting to use Twitter. But either or is probably the best way. Generally pretty active. I might not speak a lot on Twitter, but I'm there, and I'm speak to people in DMs and that kind of thing. And I'm not great at Discord, I have to say.
Yeah, no worries.
But I mean, just keep an eye on Twitter. That's generally where I put stuff out about this work. And if I actually haven't announced the game yet, I've been telling people it's coming, but I'll probably post about that tonight. And then as updates come to the game, I'll probably put it out there as well.
Okay, I'm gonna caveat this. I'm gonna say it's early access on the Discord, so that they know. I wanted to ask you. Well, first, let's do the POAP for everybody. The POAP code, the secret code is on-chain photo, no spaces, on-chain photo. And I'm gonna make sure I mint this one myself because it's absolute fire. On-chain photo. Awesome. This is possibly one of my favorite POAPs that we've had the privilege of being able to share from a creative. Let me see if I can get it on here. There you go. Super dope. Thank you so much for sharing that with our community. I did want to ask you, so how has the reaction been to this project from a couple of different sectors? How's the reaction been from the NFT photography kind of community, the on-chain enthusiast, or even gaming enthusiast?
I mean, my engagement on Twitter, or I guess maybe it's just the engagement on my Twitter it's quite slow, but there has been very strong interest from, I would say, more from people that really understand what fully on-chain is.
Right.
From the photography side, I think people probably think it's quite cool, these Game Boy images. But I think the people that understand it being on chain probably have more of a technical knowledge. There seems to be pretty decent interest from there. I haven't put the game up yet, so I don't know what the reaction will be to that. I'm hoping it'll be positive. And I just think, I think the interest has been quite good because it's just using the technology for, like I was saying, a very pure form of what it is. It's an image directly from the camera, directly on the blockchain. There's no faffing around with it. There's no editing. There's no external links. It's all very simple.
Right. And I think, from a game enthusiast perspective, the fact that it kind of is adjacent to pixel art almost in a way, right? You're kind of translating a traditional photo into essentially pixel art. It's what would be on the Game Boy. I think that captures some of their imagination as well. So I think that I think you cross a lot of different segments and who would probably be excited about this, and I think that's very cool, because not a lot of projects do that. So thank you so much for sharing with us. This is super dope, and I love to talk with people that are really pushing the boundaries and capabilities of what we can do here with the tech, and also the way that we interpret and bring our art to the masses. So really appreciate you talking to us about the project now that it's live, and looks like continued development on a lot of cool fronts.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's I suppose it's a life's goal that I now have a Game Boy game, so I'm happy with that one.
I did have a couple questions from the community if you got a couple
Yeah,
minutes.
far away.
Someone asked, what is your favorite Game Boy game, and are there any modern games that you like?
My favorite Game Boy game is Tetris DX. I can't remember if it's the marathon one, or I could have a look, but basically it's not the top option, it's the second option. I just kind of muscle memory goes straight through to it, but it's like fast Tetris games rather than the long drawn out one.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I suppose the one that I was obsessed with when I was a kid was Super Mario. And then more so on the SNES was Mario Kart. But more modern games, I probably just don't have the time to get into them,
I hear that. Yeah.
My mind is too busy. But yeah, some of the stuff I saw one earlier that a friend of mine tweeted. I can't remember what it was, but it was basically like a body cam first person shooter, and it was like the graphics were more or less like real life. I thought it was a real life video that someone was trying to pass off as a game, but it was scarily close to realistic.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm with you there on a couple of fronts. Number one, I have this collection of games that are still in their boxes that I bought with, I was ambitious, but I like the fact that I collect it. So it makes sense. I'm in NFTs, I suppose. Right.
Yeah.
But now, there's blockchain gaming. So maybe that additional little carrot of interest and why it's cool, may pull you back in when you do have time.
Yeah. Actually, there was one, Dylan, the guy that wrote the contract, was telling me about their recent. He sent me a link to what it was, but it sounded super cool. Basically, he was saying that it was some development that they're working on where you can own the NFTs. Let's say like your little plot of land, and then if you complete a task, you get another NFT that NFT owns contractually. So it just sounded like there's some really interesting stuff going on with kind of the gamification aspect of this whole thing, and on a contract level.
Yeah, there definitely is. Someone asked, with regards to on-chain projects, are there any other on-chain projects that interest you?
I mean, the biggest name that I know of is Rip Cash, I guess is his name, or RIP Cash, and he's been getting quite a lot of attention recently. I think he had a Sotheby's piece. I haven't actually connected with him yet. I haven't spoken to him, but I love the imagery of what he's doing. There's another guy called Smokestacks that kind of has like sort of like it's not glitchy, but kind of like a fuzzy animation. Kind of like, I don't know how you would describe it, like a fuzzy animation that's fully on chain. So there is a few artists that I know of that are doing things fully on chain, and generally they seem to be additions rather than one of ones, probably like I was saying from the cost point of view. But that, and then the very early tokens is what I was interested in when I started learning about what was going on with the contracts directly. So there was stuff like Pixarium, which was basically like you essentially purchased a pixel on a board, and you could change the color and the message that was on it, and that information was stored on chain. So they were all really, really simple. Like, you essentially owned a number or a pixel, and from an aesthetic point of view, it was all pretty basic, but it was from a very, very experimental time, and I think that's what interested me most about it.
Right. Yeah, no, there's not a huge um selection, but some of the
Yeah,
ones that did do stuff are really interesting, even some of the modern ones
yeah.
that are doing stuff now. Um
I think some of the stuff that's coming out on chain, it really, really amazes me that they've somehow figured out how to compress something to be able to put it on chain. That's what's really interesting to me, or really impressive to me.
yeah, there's some crazy like stuff with the contract that they do, especially the deploy
Yeah,
Cyberbroker deployed a huge collection of thousands of avatars with clothing that mixes and matches and all kinds of stuff, and
yeah,
how they're able to do it, like I'm not even sure. They had spaces dedicated to just talking about the complexity in
yeah,
it. But I mean, to deploy that contract and those assets, I mean, that alone is a big resource. So, but yeah, there's a lot of experimenting going on now, and I love that you're in the mix, and loving what it means. Almost the opposite of why we really appreciated the impermanence of the graffiti stuff.
yeah.
Another question that came in, someone said, uh, with your interest in tech integrations, any plans to do more dynamic things with your AR and VR sculpting?
Um, yeah. I mean, I was kind of working with a group called Illust Space, sort of more so in 2021, and they were working on geolocating uh, these digital assets out in the world. And you know, uh, it's really, really interesting to me that you can permanently lock these digital assets in certain locations. Um, but until AR glasses are widely used, I think that's, I mean, it's a proof of technology, really.
Right.
But I would definitely once, I suppose, once that's adopted, whatever that looks like in the next few years, I would 100% be looking at displaying these works out in the world.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm waiting for those VR glasses and
The
AR
Apple
glasses
glasses.
that look normal, right?
Yeah,
Like I don't want to
exactly.
walk around. I don't want to walk around looking like I'm a pilot. I definitely want to have it more streamlined. Two more, and I'll let you run. I hear texts going off over there. I'm sure you're in demand. Someone said they saw you experimenting with AI not long ago. Any plans to do more with it in the future?
Yeah, again, that was just experimenting. So I was sitting there when I was just sitting here one night, and I was like, I wonder if this AI thing could actually make a photograph for me. Um, and because the stuff I'd seen was, I don't know, it was more, you could tell that it was a generated image. Now, since obviously people are doing insane things with it, but I was just blown away because, like, within 5 commands, I had images coming out that looked identical to the photographs that I would take if I was shooting one of these abandoned buildings, to the level where you could actually see the grain on the film. So would I use it? Yeah, probably. I've thought about making a series with them, but it would probably have to be the right opportunity. But I'm definitely not against it. Um, I find it interesting that AI generated images are winning photography competitions. So
Right. That
yeah,
led to a pretty contentious debate on our Discord. Not so much on whether or not it should have won, because clearly it shouldn't, have qualified and be compared to people using pure photography. But in some ways, people were talking about the artistic merit of it and whether it actually should be called anything with photography in the tagline. But that will open up a whole new. We'll be here for another hour. Owen, I'm trying to let you get out of here.
If you were to look at, I'm sure there's film photography purists that consider digital photos not photos. You're not developing the film. You're not burning it onto paper. It's just the new level of that is the way that I look at it. It's something that if you don't understand it, you can either do what you can to understand it or reject it and move on. And then eventually you're going to have to understand it,
Right. Yeah. And they were getting into the weeds, right? Like this uses light, this doesn't. And I'm like, well, how does it get on the screen without light? And we could be on that path for quite some time. So I'm intrigued to see how things continue to evolve there. The last piece from the community, which is actually a comment, but I find it hilarious. So I want to share it with you. Someone DM'd me and said, hey, look at those pics. But now imagine if he used a 3DS or the old Virtua Boy, black and red. Interesting.
Was the Virtua Boy the one that was the VR?
Yeah, it was. You had to set it up on the table with the tripod and put your head to it.
Yeah. I actually saw one of them in a charity shop last year.
I think it gave people, they got bad vertigo and other issues. But I mean, hey, that could be the next series. Who knows? Maybe someone has a good idea there.
Someone actually did. Is it the 3DS that has a browser on it?
I believe they do, yeah.
Yeah, because someone was asking on Twitter the other day if they could play the browser game on the 3DS. I'm not sure yet because I haven't got one, but that's something I really want to find out, because if the browser displays just the screen of the game and then you can use the controls as a Game Boy, I think that'd be amazing.
I'm not sure how the key mapping would work, but I could test it out. Mini Knight does have a 3DS, and every time I'm traveling, I ask him if I could, borrow it, and he refuses. It's even though he's not using it, he still refuses. So I think I got to get my own at some point. Although I think I mentioned this to you, I really prefer the Nintendo DS, so it's thinner than the original Game Boy, obviously, right? But it's just I like to have the buttons closer together than like I can't really do the Switch. Like having that spread to me just bothers me. Maybe I'm just old school or a purist or whatever, but it is what it is. Either way, we could play this on our keyboard. I did drop it in the Discord. If you're interested in the game, go to the Whale Discord. In the stream text chat, you will see it says early access. Don't be giving out the link now. We're waiting for an official announcement, but you guys can go ahead and play it. See if you can tell you what, if someone can get to the collector, and there's a number of steps you have to get to the collector and post on the Discord a screenshot of it and tag me, I will drop you guys a little something special. Right? Maybe some whale, maybe an NFT, maybe a dope POAP, but either way, get to the collector and drop me a screenshot of it along and with tagging me on the Discord, and I will drop you something back in kind, because I appreciate that it took me about 45 minutes to almost get there and I lost progress. So I want to see what happens in his office now. Someone show me.
I feel it's going to be a bit of an anticlimax for you.
Hey, I don't care. It's about the progression. People grind out games just to get their what do you call them? Just get the achievements. So I need to see this one now, guys. I need to see it. But anyway, it's super, super dope. I could talk about this for a long time. Very intrigued to see where you continue to take this collection. And thank you for being such an experimental participant here in the NFT space. It's been a pleasure.
And you always. It's good to talk.
Take care, my friend.
See you.